What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review The Bikeriders, the first movie from director Jeff Nichols since 2016. In 2016, he had two movies. Then he had this long hiatus, but the movie is adapted from the photo book of the same name. The book came out in 1967 from Danny Lyon. But this is a movie about a biker gang in the 1960s. And full disclosure, I've never been on a motorcycle. I own this biker jacket because my stepdad, may he rest in peace, he was a big Steve McQueen fanatic. And so one year I asked him for Christmas for a leather jacket, and he got me a motorcycle jacket that's got like fucking shoulder pads and elbow pads. I mean, I could like go to war with this fucking thing and just be totally impervious to harm. But speaking of which, we're in the middle of a goddamn heat wave here in New York. And I can't do this review with this jacket, or I'm going to end up sweating myself to death. So I enjoyed the gimmick of the jacket. But thank you, Billy, for giving me a cool jacket. But it ain't going to go the distance with this video. But let's talk about the flick. There's a lot of good here, and I'm rooting hard for the movie to deliver because I do like filmmaker Jeff Nichols. But the movie also has a few problems, which I'm going to be very honest about. And I'm going to try to tap dance my way around any spoilers initially, but I will have to get into some details toward the end of the video. But I'll give you a full heads up beforehand, and I'll leave a time code in the description below if you want to know where spoilers begin. But what is the premise of this flick? So as written on Wikipedia, The Bikeriders is a 2023 American crime drama film written and directed by Jeff Nichols. It tells a fictional story inspired by the 1967 photo book of the same name by Danny Lyon, depicting the lives of the Outlaws MC, a motorcycle club founded in McCook, Illinois. The film stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Mike Feist, and Norman Reedus. The Bikeriders premiered at the 50th Telluride Film Festival on August 31st, 2023. Also, quick interruption, if you've never been to Telluride, go to Telluride. It is bliss in heaven for movie lovers. Small little mountain town surrounded by places where you can hike and take edibles and that sort of thing and watch movies day and night. It fucking rules. I went there with a short film many years ago. But originally scheduled to be released theatrically in the United States on December 1st, 2023 by 20th Century Studios, the release was delayed due to the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. Ultimately, Focus Features acquired the film from producer New Regency, scheduling it for its current release date of June 21st, 2024. And if I were going to make the elevator pitch to somebody about whether or not they should go see The Bikeriders, I would say this is a movie that aspires to be the Goodfellas of biker gang movies, where you get a lot of voiceover narration, a lot of people looking back on their lives, talking about some of the outrageous things they experienced. It is not as good as Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas, I think I've seen that maybe more than any other film from the 1990s, but at least it aspires to greatness. And there's some really good stuff in here, like Austin Butler, Jesus fucking Christ. I don't know if anybody has a right to be as handsome and attractive as Austin Butler, but he got my attention in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then I really took notice of him in Elvis. And then when he played Fade Routha in Dune Part 2, I was like, all right, you're a badass. You lead, I'll follow. Where are we going? And where he went was The Bikeriders, where this is a movie that's kind of tailor-made to play to all of his strengths, where he just gets to sit around looking cool, smoking cigarettes, perfect hair, leather, actually not leather jackets, but like those jean jackets that are the colors that they like to wear, and occasionally get some fist fights and like these knockdown, drag out brawls and that sort of thing. But he just gets to be the strong, moody, brooding, silent type, a lot like Marlon Brando way back in The Wild One.
Do you want something?
Yeah. I'd like a bottle of beer.
The movie that got these fucking biker gang movies really up and running. And I must confess, I'm not a biker gang connoisseur. I've seen a few of the essentials. Like, obviously, I've seen Easy Rider a million times, but that's not really a biker gang movie. It's a movie that's kind of capitalizing on the biker craze, but a movie like The Wild Angels with Peter Fonda, that's a biker gang movie. And I read the book, The Hell's Angels by Hunter S. Thompson, and that was obviously incredible. I mean, if you want to do the deep dive into that Hell's Angels culture, Hunter S. Thompson will take you there. But I think my favorite biker movie is an Australian biker movie called Stone from the 1970s, which is just balls to the wall, hardcore. I almost feel like I can kind of retire from watching biker gang movies because I've seen Stone. And Stone's kind of hard to find, but it's well worth the hunt.
Stone is a trip.
In any case, the character played by Austin Butler's name is Benny, and he's kind of the heart and soul of this biker gang, while the leader might be played by Tom Hardy, and he has to be kind of like, the toughest nails, total badass who kind of cracks the whip and keeps everybody in line. But what everybody aspires to be is the character Benny. But we hear about Benny and we learn about Benny through the eyes of Jodie Comer's character. She's being interviewed by this photojournalist over a period of several years, where you get to see the idealistic early days of the club, and then the really gnarly, nasty latter days of the club, where it basically just becomes like, organized crime for running drugs and weapons and, kills for hire and all that kind of stuff. And you really just get to see how this whole culture just starts circling the drain and going to the darkest side imaginable. And I think one of the biggest flaws of the movie, and I say this with full love and affection and respect, because I do think she's an incredibly talented actress, but the biggest flaw of this movie is this outrageous accent that Jodie Comer employs to tell the story.
That's when I saw him for the first time. It took my breath away.
Because she's telling the story, there's a ton of voiceover narration, and she's also constantly being interviewed. But goddamn, she invented an accent, which I don't think this accent's ever been heard anywhere in the United States. Or if it has been heard, it comes from a region where the dialect is so specific and so unusual and so obscure that no one's ever heard it. But it's incredibly distracting. I would say, in the first 5 minutes, I was like, do I need to leave this movie? I don't know if I can handle this. And then over time, maybe I just notice it less, or maybe just because she's so fucking pretty that you find yourself just falling in love with her, even if the accent is just really grating. But I feel like sometimes actors, when they're trying too hard to kind of capture a region-specific dialect, they can, they can crank it up a bit and get into the realm of pure caricature or absurdity. And the reason that's so upsetting or so annoying is that director and writer Jeff Nichols is known for his gritty authenticity when it comes to capturing regional dialects. His first 3 movies, we've got Shotgun Stories, which he shot for $250,000, which really put him on the map back in 2007. We've got Take Shelter, and we've got Mud, and all those movies are set in and around Arkansas, where Jeff Nichols is from, and he knows that world. He knows the way people speak, people who live on rivers, their entire lives, making their living off of a river. He knows the way they live. He knows the way they speak to each other, and he knows that kind of gritty authenticity, as I mentioned before. And so it's just bizarre that in this movie that's set, kind of up in the Midwest, that he would allow his actors to kind of indulge in what I would describe as acting with a capital A, where it's like the inmates have taken over the asylum. And I feel like the director's job in some cases is to say, look, less is more. Tap the brakes, shave the rough edges off that accent. Give me the emotional truth as opposed to whatever this accent is that you've cooked up. But I found that to be horribly distracting, and I don't think I'll be alone on that front. But it's unusual for a British actress to get things so wrong when it comes to accents. I feel like usually it's the reverse, where you have American actors trying to do an English accent and just completely butchering it. But Jodie Comer, I don't know what accent she should have used, but it should have just been maybe a neutral accent. It reminded me a little bit of the movie Black Mass, where Benedict Cumberbatch is trying really hard to do one of those Bostonian accents. And if you don't have a natural Bostonian accent, just leave it alone. Don't do the dropping of the R's and all that kind of stuff. It's such a complete and total, cartoon character that all these actors try to get into, and it's just listen to somebody from Boston, whether that's Louis C.K. or Bill Burr. They don't talk the way that you're talking in that movie, nor does anybody talk the way the Jodie Comer is talking in the Bikeriders. But somewhere between the really cool accent being employed by Austin Butler and the really annoying accent being used by Jodie Comer, we find Tom Hardy. And I love Tom Hardy. I've been watching him and enjoying him in movies for almost 20 years at this point. I mean, he's a world-class actor, a world-class talent. No one will ever deny that he's got the chops. He packs the gear. But he's kind of doing a weird accent as well. And it's just when you invite Brits over to America, I guess one of the best examples would be someone like Vivian Leigh doing a Southern accent in Gone with the Wind. That's because most Southerners, or a lot of Southerners, aspire to be English, and so there's an interesting overlap there. But sometimes these English actors, when they're trying too hard to be quintessentially American, and it gets a little weird, Gary Oldman's the master of this. When you watch him as Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, he sounds more grittily and authentically American than actual Americans, and he's just one of those guys where he's a true chameleon, and he can just wrap himself in the skin of all these characters. And I almost wish that Tom Hardy just kind of, once again, tap the brakes. Although, to be fair, his accent in this isn't nearly as annoying as it is in those goddamn Venom movies. And we've got a third Venom movie coming our way, but at least this is a better movie than the fucking Venom movies. But I would say on the whole, I enjoyed the movie. I was engaged with the movie. I was fascinated by the characters. I was fascinated by the way of life. Although I've heard in some reviews that the book is just absolutely extraordinary, and that the movie doesn't even begin to like approach just the I guess like the depth and the detail of the book, which is totally understandable, but I can't verify or deny because I have not read the book. But apparently the pictures are just absolutely riveting. But where this movie really excels is when these characters are part of a biker club as opposed to a biker gang. Like for our biker club, a lot of these guys, they drive trucks for a living and that sort of thing. Like they are blue collar guys, and they just enjoy getting together with their friends and working on their bikes and racing and that sort of thing. And usually once the day winds down and they're tired of spinning wheels and getting covered in mud and that sort of thing, they'll sit around the campfire and eat barbecue and drink beer. And occasionally there'll be a little fist fight, like one of the best scenes in the movie, and I guess this is a mild spoiler, but they're having this giant cookout, and there are two rival gangs that are kind of facing off. One side is accusing the other of having scratched one of their bikes. But suddenly, like, Tom Hardy just manages to completely diffuse the situation. He's like, oh, where are you guys from? Like, oh, I know so-and-so. Like, 'cause, we're both in trucking together and blah, blah, blah. And they're starting to get along when suddenly Austin Butler from a distance, he thinks he sees people about to throw down, so he just comes charging in, riding hell for leather, starts throwing fists. There's this giant brawl. But then they all become friends, and they all hang out, and they're all putting ice on their wounds and putting their hands in coolers, and they all start drinking beer and eating again. Suddenly they're all just pals, and you realize wow, for a brief shining moment, even though these guys are kind of rough and kind of dangerous, there's a sense of camaraderie and rapport and a shared vision of the world in terms of all they want to do is just ride their bikes until they die, and that's good enough for them. But then as the late 60s turn into the early 70s, the whole culture starts to change, where the drugs get harder and the kids get more violent. A lot of these kids are coming home from Vietnam and are kind of struggling to find a sense of purpose or meaning. But you can just see that it's transforming from club life to more of a criminal enterprise and that sort of thing. And the older guys are getting pushed out and or just getting their asses kicked or killed or whatever the case might be. And you're seeing just how like the dark side of this dream is turned into a full-blown nightmare. And I was thinking, all right, this is really, really cool, and it's inevitably leading to where something really horrible and really tragic is going to happen. And then Benny's going to have to step up and go out in a blaze of glory, kind of putting everybody in their place. And it seemed like all roads were leading to some big, giant emotional climax. And I guess now I do have to offer full-blown spoiler warning, because I can't discuss my frustration with the ending without going into some detail. But this movie has no ending. It goes out on a whimper. It just fucking dies. All the air goes out of the balloon, and you're like, what? That's your fucking ending? Because in the end, once again, full-blown spoiler alert, Tom Hardy gets murdered by one of these young up-and-coming kids who he's kind of kept out of the club for a long time, and he just gets executed, bullet to the heart. And so Benny comes back. Benny's been gone for a year over some frustrations with the gang, and he doesn't want to take it over the way Tom Hardy keeps asking him to. But I thought he was going to come back and get revenge for his best friend, kill everybody, maybe die in the process or get shot down by cops, and it would just be like one of those kick-ass kind of biker gang endings. But instead, he just cries a little bit, and he and Jodie Comer move to Florida, and they just retire as suburbanites, just kind of drinking beer and talking about nothing. And at the end of the movie, you can see Austin Butler just sitting there, and you can hear the revving of engines in his head. You can tell he's never going to fully let go of that way of life. But it's that is the weakest, just shittiest ending imaginable. It's any second-rate hack on the planet could write you a better ending than that. And I think it's going to result in this movie being a commercial disaster. And this is a $40 million movie. It's the biggest budget that Jeff Nichols has worked with yet. I was looking up earlier, some of his movies were more or less down in the 10 million range. Mud was made for 10 million and it grossed 32. It's not setting the world on fire, but that was a profitable little venture which allowed him to make Midnight Special and Loving in 2016. Loving had a budget of $9 million, only grossed 12.9. Midnight Special had a budget of 18, but only grossed 7. Jeff Nichols, he's developing a reputation for being box office poison outside of actually, I don't know what the box office and budget was on Take Shelter, so I should definitely look that up. But this is the biggest risk that he's taken yet with his career. And if this movie doesn't gross somewhere between 80 and 100 million, it's going to be yet another money-losing venture. And now he's operating at a scale where his failures become much more visible. And I think it's a shame, because he's clearly a very talented director. He's starting to remind me a little bit of director James Gray, where he's a really good filmmaker who is yet to make his big kick-ass breakout hit. And I feel no matter how talented you are, no matter how loyal your fans are, every once in a while you have to prove that you can actually put butts in seats and sell some goddamn tickets. And James Gray has really struggled, even though he's made a lot of really cool fucking flicks. Movies like Two Lovers and Ad Astra and The Lost City of Z. But yeah, once again, he has yet to have that big runaway success that really puts him on the map, like for good. And I worry that with Jeff Nichols, if this movie underperforms, and there's a very real chance that it might, I worry he'll be put in director's jail forever, and he might end up being like, somebody who directs the occasional episode of TV or gets to come in and do some screenwriting duties on some TV shows and that sort of thing. But I just feel like he's got the talent and the ability to do so much more. But it just blows my mind that he was able to make this movie with this fucked up, lackluster, boring ending. Even if it's faithful to the book itself, I would have said at this point, take some poetic license, put a big disclaimer at the beginning of the movie and say something like, the following is based on mostly true events. And then you just give us a kick-ass ending with all the fist fights and the violence and the shotguns and pistols that you could ever ask for, because this movie, it doesn't ever give you the release. You keep wanting to see like the attack dog break his chain and Austin Butler go on like a big giant murderous rampage. There is one bar scene where some guys ask him to take off his colors. He refuses. They get in a fight. He slashes a guy. Someone nearly chops his foot off with a shovel. I mean, it's a gnarly little scene, but it's just an appetizer. We need to see like the main event. But what else can we say about this movie? I'd like to end on a positive note. I'll say Michael Shannon, he's good in this. Michael Shannon is kind of the lucky rabbit's foot for Jeff Nichols. He's in all of his movies, and they work well together. I feel like Michael Shannon's best role for him is probably Take Shelter, where he really just gets to take center stage and unleash the beast and act like a total fucking maniac. A maniac who turns out to be right in the long run. And Norman Reedus, he's pretty good in this. Maybe they overdid it a little bit with his gnarly teeth, but I liked him in it. Carl Glusman is good in this. I always like seeing him in action. Paul Sparks, Happy Anderson, it's like the early days of the gang, the first generation of this club. All those characters, they're very likable, and basically all they do all day, every day, sit around chain smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, and every once in a while someone will challenge them to a fight, and they got to knuckle up and throw down. But it's a way of life that they love and adore. And if you're a gearhead, there's the occasional conversation about people working on their bikes. And I mean, I'm not a gearhead at all. So everything they were saying went right over my head. But I'm assuming if you're into bikes and working on the engines and that sort of thing, that people will enjoy those conversations. Or at least I hope those scenes are as grittily authentic as they at least sounded to my uneducated ears. And I do think this movie is proof that Austin Butler has the potential to be one of the biggest movie stars of his generation. Like, will there ever be movie stars again like we saw in the 1990s where you could just cast people in a certain movie and people would go to see it just for that star? Like Julia Roberts, Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, Leonardo DiCaprio. Like there's certain Brad Pitt, there's certain movie stars in the 90s where they were full-blown stars where the material almost didn't matter. It was just you wanted to see that star in action. But Austin Butler, holy shit, he's got the talent, he's got the looks, he's got the taste, but this movie might interrupt the flow of his career just a bit if it wildly underperforms, but at least he's really good. And I think no matter what people think about this movie, they're going to come away from it thinking, Jesus Christ, Austin Butler, that kid, he's got some serious talent, and the sky's the limit if he can partner up with really good filmmakers moving forward. And I think on paper, this probably sounded like a good idea, but holy shit, I'm still just in awe over how fucking boring the ending of the movie is. In any event, I think I've said enough about this movie at this point. If you are curious about the topic or you like the trailer, definitely check it out. Like I said, I was engaged and I was interested for like 90% of the movie. I just was really frustrated with Jodie Comer's performance, and I was really frustrated with the ending. But apart from that, the movie is pretty goddamn good. And I think some people will really like it. So that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and hitting all to make sure you get the notifications. But I hope everybody has a great weekend at the movies, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.